Hi, are you an author in the middle of self-publishing your next book? Somewhere along the process, you've probably heard about creating an audiobook. You've been encouraged to make an audiobook. You know friends who've made the investment in creating an audiobook, but you can't bring yourself to get started because getting into the technical weeds just seems too daunting. But what if we could take that all away? What if we could remove 90% of the technical barriers, so all you would have to do is show up to the microphone and record? Or maybe you don't want to record your own audiobook. That's totally fine too. We have an experienced team of professional narrators that would love to audition for your audiobook. Our Done For You service guarantees that you will have a professionally produced audiobook ready for commercial release. If you're ready to get started today, please click the link below and schedule a free call. We can't wait to hear from you and to get started on your project.
Hello, and welcome into another episode of Shine with Curiosity and Encouragement podcast. We are, as always, sponsored by Soul Sunshine. Be sure to visit us at soulsunshine.com for all your author services, which we have some very cool author services going on right now and some new things that we're trying out. And man, it has just been incredibly exciting what we've got going on over there. So check us out. I am author Stephen Urias. With me, as always, is my best friend and publisher, Susan Gabriel. Hi, Susan. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Yesterday was
Good.
my son's birthday, so
hmm
we went
Yeah,
out and we had some fun. We
16.
did some, yeah, he's 16. I know. Man came down the stairs this morning, and I was just like, "Whoa, what happened?"
Yeah, they grow up so fast, as they say.
Yeah,
Yeah. Did he
it's
have
so
a good
funny.
birthday?
He did. He did. We went shopping, and
Uh-huh.
he went with his older sisters to, pick out some clothes and things like that.
hmm
Because at 16 years old, you want to be stylish and you want to be comfortable. So
Uh-huh.
he
Yep.
he came downstairs this morning, and we had his new clothes on. He's like, "I love the way this feels," and he's just excited about it. So,
Oh, has he got any girlfriends yet?
um, I'm not supposed to talk about that.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry I asked.
It's not my information to share.
It's a secret, huh? Well, I think the answer at the a boy at the age of 16 is maybe.
Oh no. Well, yes, he does, but it, he's a good kid. He's a good kid. I'm very proud of
Mhm.
him.
Yeah, he
Um,
is. He really is.
yeah, I mean, especially with everything that's gone on, he's very resilient. He's staying positive and everything like that. So,
Yeah, that's really great.
speaking of resiliency and positivity, we do have a special guest today by the name of Richard Fischer Jr. Richard has had a life, and he is the owner of Divinely Inspired Designs. So, without further ado, without further ado, let's bring Richard to the stage. Hi, Richard. How's it
Hey
going?
guys, how
Hi,
you
Richard.
doing?
Hi,
Doing
we're
Great to
well,
great.
see
doing
you.
well. Good to see you too. So, you are the owner of Divinely Inspired Designs.
Yes, sir.
I want to start off this podcast because I've gotten to check this out a little bit, and I think that our listeners and podcasters out there would just like to know what is divinely inspired design.
Well, following a near-death injury in my construction job about 5 years ago, um, I had a need to come up with another source of income. I am on Social Security. My wife's on disability, and that just doesn't cut it. So I felt at one point that the Lord was saying, "You need to start this business." It was actually a restart from something I did years ago. It was just a greeting card business at that point, and I had to shut it down. And the Lord told me He would one day resurrect it, and so He decided to resurrect it and rename it. And so we basically design and print things from business cards to 5 foot by 10 foot vinyl banners, and we're seeking to serve.
Now, do you do the designs yourself, or
Yeah, my wife and I do them. Yes.
and tell us about some of the designs that you've done. What
Well,
kind of things?
we've designed business cards for a Christian artist. We've designed business cards for ourselves, of course, for a pro-life physician, a retired pro-life physician. We've also designed, speaking of the 5-foot by 10-foot vinyl banners, we've designed pro-life banners. We designed a one specifically that I'm really intrigued with was this woman had previously had 5 abortions, came to the Lord, now obviously repented of that situation or those situations, and she wanted something to help to share her testimony. So one of those banners is of her, figuratively speaking, the 5 aborted kids represented by different graphics of, in the womb children or sonograms. And then her 4 living children that she had after those abortions are down below with the background of kind of like a Texas mountain scene. She really liked that. So we did that. We did an awesome similar banner for a business, photography business. He wanted something fairly simple, just with his logo on one side, and on the other side, a big, QR code. So people could just click on their phone and be led to his website. And we've done a few other projects. We've done social media posts and that too. I've got one gentleman right now who wants me to do social media posts for a ministry that he's currently working with, human trafficking ministry, or anti-human trafficking ministry, obviously. And a number of other projects along the way. So, I mean, not only business cards, but greeting cards, invitations, puzzles, magnetic car
Sounds like you've got a lot.
signs. We can do a lot of different things. And what we can't do now, if we don't have access to something that we know, as far as a print place to print these things, if they have something custom that they want to do, we can search it out. We can find a place to get the things that they want to print. We can always do the design work and so about the printing somewhere.
Sounds good. Sounds like we've got a lot going on and a lot of different projects to fulfill. And you've helped a lot of people.
Yeah.
You said that you got injured on the job during construction, and that kind of put you down for a little bit.
Yep.
But you've also experienced a whole lot of other trauma in your life.
Yep. That I have.
We talked a little bit about it, but I want our listeners to know out there. Just give us your story. Start back as far as you want.
Okay. Well, I'll go back to near the end of my first marriage. She decided to divorce me for somebody else after 9 years of marriage. And that was tough to deal with, of course. And following that, I would meet a amazing singer. Her name was Brenda B.J. McClanahan. And we would meet at church. She used to work at Sid Roth's ministry, if you know who Sid Roth is. He's a Messianic Jewish evangelist. And he actually introduced her to my first Messianic Jewish pastor. And then she would come near, I guess, about the last year of my marriage. And we were in the same home group. So, we knew of each other. But after the divorce was final, we started talking a little bit more. And one day she invited me to go on to one of the pro-life marches in DC. I lived in the Northern Virginia area at the time. And so I agreed to go. We weren't really dating, but I agreed to go. And the Lord worked in so many amazing ways that day. We were interviewed, or she was interviewed by Christianity Today. We were both interviewed by actually the Washington Post, and she got 7th and 8th line front page Washington Post with her statements that day. And we had friends with us from a Catholic congregation, and they were trying to get noticed. They were trying to share stuff with people and not getting anywhere. We were doing nothing but being there and enjoying the rally. And it was just like, what is this? And they were looking at us going, something's up here. And, what's going on? And so at one point we started the march to the Supreme Court from the rally grounds where they were speaking. And I reached out to grab her hand to help her off the curb, and we just didn't let go. And we got back to the bus after going to the Supreme Court, and we started talking and said, I think God's got something for us. So that started our marriage. I won't go into all the details of our marriage. It was 17 years long. But about, 14 years into that marriage, on Thanksgiving evening, after we went to closing on our house in Tennessee, we moved to Tennessee, and we were closing on our house. And after that, she says, I'm feeling really bad. I need to go to the ER. So we took her in, and that was the day before Thanksgiving. And about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, Thanksgiving morning, she was diagnosed with a liver failure that would take her life 4 years later. And quite the process to go through, needless to say. Her last hours, about 6 hours worth, I woke up kind of with a start. She was breathing really heavily. She was in the living room on a hospital bed, home hospice care, and breathing really heavy like a fish out of water. And of course, I didn't know what to do other than try to make her more comfortable. And she was breathing through her mouth rather than her nose. So I took the oxygen cannula and put it up to her mouth, not knowing really what was going on. And so the evening progressed, and I called the hospice people. They came out after a few different communications, and they really believed she was in her last moments. And so they showed up, I think it was around 6:15, 6:30, and by 7 o'clock she was gone. And so that hit me pretty hard. I mean, I'd been preparing for it, but it still hit me pretty hard. And there's a lot of ins and outs to that story too. I won't get into all those details because this is about another situation, but God would work it out through an amazing set of miracles, going back in part to a dream I had been given at the beginning of my relationship with BJ, as well as a dream I would have 8 years before I would meet and marry my current wife. That led me to actually meet and marry Carrie. And, the basic part of her story is she's an abortion survivor, pro-life speaker, and I was already trying to form a pro-life ministry at the time. So it was like, this is a match made in heaven. And there's a lot more details to that, and I can share more of that if you prefer at this point, about how we met and married.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Lay it on.
All right. Well, the way that went is about 6 months after the loss of BJ. I was speaking with a woman, I think she was about 30, it was on Facebook. I was speaking with her. She was in one of the northern states. And we were talking back and forth and sharing pictures of places that we'd wanted to go, that we either wanted to go and hadn't been to yet, or we'd been to and wanted to go back to, that kind of thing. And she shared this one picture with me. And that picture happened to be the inside of a cave that I had seen in the vision I had right around the time BJ and I were getting to know each other. And so that place turned out to be, I asked her where it was, and she says it's Hamilton Pool in Austin, Texas. And again, I was living in Tennessee at the time. And I just started praying and said, Lord, I don't know what you've got for me there, but I know I got to go. Please make the way. I hadn't been working much, so I didn't really have the finances to do it at that point. But within 2 months, God made the way for me to go. The story got to through another friend of mine in the Austin area, which is near where Hamilton Pool is. It's just outside of Austin to the southwest. And this trucker found out about the story, and he said, I'll put you up in a hotel for a week and a half if you want to come down here. And the friends that I knew that were already in the area offered to take me out to dinner every night, tour me around the city, that kind of thing. And so I got to the area, checked into my hotel. The next morning, I went to Hamilton Pool for the first time. And I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. I knew there was something, but I didn't know what it was. And so one of the first things I did once I got on the property was I walked into the cave and I turned around and faced in the direction of the dream. And let me get back and share a little bit more of the dream. In the dream, the first thing I saw was looking at the cave sidewall and the ceiling. And that's the picture she showed me initially. And then I turned and looked out. And what I saw looking out was this beautiful emerald green water, like an ocean. And there was an emerald green sunrise. And submerged beneath the water, just a few feet below the surface of the water, was this rock that looked like a finger pointing in the direction of this emerald green sunrise. So that's why I had the impression that I needed to go and look to see what this was, what I was supposed to find. And so I went, stood in the cave, looked out, and I ended up seeing initially the beach off just a little bit to my right. But beyond that was the trail that led back to where you had to make a choice either to go to Hamilton Pool, go back up the steps that I'd come down, or go to the left. And there was a river that was 0.6 of a mile away. So I'd already been in the parking lot. I knew what that looked like. I'd already been to Hamilton Pool itself. So I decided I'm going to take this hike. So I took the hike, and it opened up to this beautiful, again, emerald green river, slow flowing river, very shallow. I think the deepest part was 4 or 5 feet. And, I'm not sure if I'm going to find $1 million under a rock, or, what am I looking for, Lord? I don't know. And so at one point, I don't remember if it was my first time to visit there, because I did go back a day or two later and visited one more time. I don't remember if it was my first or second visit to the pool, but I decided I was going to take the 2 plastic recorder flutes that I had. I was going to go sit behind a rock, and I was just going to start praising the Lord on these recorder flutes. Not that I'm all that great of a musician, but I enjoy it. And I know the Lord does too. And so I was doing that, and all of a sudden it hit me. This was my Psalm 23 moment. It was, it leads me beside, or lays me down in green pastures, leads me beside these quiet waters, and restores my soul. So the Lord was using this time to restore my soul and prepare me for what he was still going to reveal right after my last visit to Hamilton Pool. So after that last visit, I went back to my hotel room, and I'm sitting there on the bed, and I'm scrolling Facebook. That tends to be my thing. I do a lot of Facebook stuff, still do. And I'm a very relational type of person. So I enjoy making new friends and that kind of thing. And so I'm in my hotel room. I'm on Facebook, and I had made another friend about a year or two earlier that was in the Houston area. And she had a pro-life ministry. And her testimony is that she actually was her mother was gang raped by 8 men, and her mom chose life for her. She had a pro-life ministry called, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of her ministry right now to save my life. But it was focusing on saving the exceptions, because she was a rape-conceived baby, and that's one of the exceptions that's oftentimes spoken of. And, rape, incest, and life of the mother. And so I'm on her page and scrolling through her page, and I come across this post of a woman by the name of, at that point, Carrie Holland. And I noticed her disfigured face, and the left side of her face was paralyzed. And I knew nothing about her at that point, but we started talking because something I haven't shared yet is 2 weeks before I left on the trip from Tennessee to Austin, I would be reminded of an aspect of a painting I received through or actually it's a picture of a painting, but the original painting came into my life because during the loss of my mother in 2003, the morning that she passed, I knew she was dying. I'd known for 5 or 6 weeks or so before that. I knew she was dying. And I asked the Lord to give me a vision of her passing, because I was down there for the first 4 weeks, but I had to get back to work. I couldn't stay there and be there for her passing. So on my way home, I'm praying and said, Lord, please at least give me a vision of her passing. And so this morning comes along a week before Thanksgiving, and I wake up and I'm seeing this vision of myself kneeling in what looked like the area that my parking spot would have been in at a house that my parents and I and my brother lived in New Hampshire for 4 or 5 years prior to my first marriage. Except in this vision, there was no parking space. It was just wooded area. And that area was wooded at the time, but it did have the parking space that was mine. And so I was kneeling there, and I was kneeling on the ground, and my hands were like this. And on my hands was this about 10 or 12 inch long tree with 2 leaves coming off one side. Excuse me. And as odd as it sounds in the natural, the same hands that were holding the tree were also digging the hole at the same time. And I knew in all of this that it was both my hands and the Lord's hands at the same time. One set of hands, but they were together. And what happened in the vision was that when we finished digging the hole, I lowered the tree into the hole to plant it. And as I did, this crystal clear water started pouring off the roots. And I got startled when I saw that. And my response in the vision was to pull my hands out. The water stopped flowing briefly. But then when I went to lower my hands in the water, or in the hole again to plant the tree, the water started flowing again. And I was like, Lord, what's this about? And as I prayed about it, and I won't get into all the detail of how the interpretation came, but I eventually believed that the Lord was telling me that oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I've got the wrong vision. That was actually before I got the word that my mom was on her deathbed. I've got the wrong vision. I may as well finish sharing that one. I was like, Lord, what's this about? And through circumstances, I felt that the Lord was telling me that my mom was there was something wrong with her. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I knew something was wrong with her. And I also believed I was supposed to, since the vision took place, the location of the vision was this house in New Hampshire that we lived in for 4 or 5 years. I felt like I was supposed to send the vision to whoever lived at that house. I didn't know who they were. Supposed to send the vision to them. And I was supposed to include a scripture from Romans 11 that says, you don't support the root, but the root supports you. And so I did that. And then 3 days later, I got the call that my mom had indeed passed away. And so I had to hightail it back down to Florida where they lived. And, just a whole bunch of things happened there. But the morning before I got the call that she passed away, after coming back after being there for 4 weeks, and then, having to make the trip back down like 2 or 3 days afterwards, after we got home, the vision I had that morning that I knew I was going to be getting a call that day that she passed away was this beautiful scene in space where I saw these golden spheres of crystal clear oil. They were like 7 rows of 7. And when I say 7 rows of 7, they were like over top of each other. And I can't really show it here very well, but let's just say this finger represents one of those. And there were interspaced like right in between each other. And then the next row was spaced over and then over again and over again. So, and they were all hovering kind of together, a little in unison because there was some motion individually, but they were moving as a unit as well. And, of course, 7 is the number of rest and perfection in in the Jewish mindset. And so I just knew I was going to get a call. And again, it was very peaceful. So the Lord was giving me peace in the midst of this storm that I was going through with losing my mom. I was very close to my mother. And so we went back down there. And during the course of the morning after I got there, I checked my email on my dad's computer, and there was an email from the woman who lived in the house that we lived in New Hampshire. And she said, "Richard, you're not going to believe this, but the day that you had that vision was mine and my husband's 29th wedding anniversary. Our son, who's an art student in a college in Massachusetts, came home with a gift of 2 paintings for us. And that painting was very reminiscent of the vision you had. You know, the one with the in the parking space, and with the tree and the golden oil. I'm sorry, not the golden oil, but there was gold in this as well. The tree was like a pastel background, like a rainbow pastel background, and the tree was actually gold, and kind of an outline, but it was the tree and its root structure. And in that root structure, there were 3 different things that she had noticed in her son's painting. One of them was the downturned face of a crying man. Then that head was being held, his head would have been facing this way. And that head was being held by a C-shaped hand like this. And right in the wrist area of that hand was a bloodshot eye. But the eye, the whites weren't bloodshot. It was the pupil that was bloodshot. And I started asking the Lord about this. And of course, I asked her to send me a copy of it too, because I hadn't seen it yet. She described it to me, but I hadn't seen it yet. So I said, please send me a copy of this. I've got to see this. And so she took pictures of it, sent it to me. And as I was praying about it, what the Lord showed me in those 3 things initially was that if somebody literally had that condition where their pupil was bloodshot, they would see everything through the blood, spiritually speaking of the blood of Christ. And so, that began to really minister to me. And especially when the day I was about to, in fact, I think it was early that morning before my mom came home from home hospice care, not from the hospital, into home hospice care. I had gone outside to take a walk, and I noticed she was a gardener, and this is a very small home and not a big yard, but she had a little flower garden in the front, and there was this little artificial stone in the garden that said, "Welcome to my garden." And instantly that song came to mind, I come to the garden alone. And so it was like, I have a feeling like the Lord wants me to sing this song at her memorial service whenever that happens. And so I would then go in, and when my mom came back into the house, I would go in and sit down with her as the eldest son. We were 2 living children. My brother was 2.5 years younger than I was, and I had a sister who died at birth. I sat her down and I said, "Mom, what would you like from your memorial service?" And she said, "Well, Richard, one of my most favorite songs is In the Garden. Could you possibly sing that song for me?" And I said, I'll do my best, Mom. And so, I prayed about that. And, she had also asked me to sing 2 other songs. There's only one I could do because I didn't know the other one at all. And we didn't have any music for it. And so it was actually a song I wrote. The other one I did know is a song I wrote, one of the few songs I've ever written, called For Those Who Mourn, another testimony that relates back to the incidents of 9/11. And so when her memorial service came, I was able to sing those songs at her request. They played the 3rd song. They recorded it with the worship team from their church singing it. And they just played that last song on the tape. And after this was all over, people came up to me and was like, how in the world, Richard, did you do that? I would have been a total basket case. I could never have held myself together to sing like that, you know, during my mom's memorial service. And I said, well, let me tell you a story. And so they got an earful that day, needless to say. A little less than today, but so
I'm curious
anyway.
on you've said dreams and you've said visions.
Mm-hmm.
Are they different? Are you getting these dreams when you're sleeping? Are you getting these visions when you're
Yeah,
awake?
and
Is
sometimes
there
it's a little hard to tell the difference because there's times when it's like right in that stage where I'm starting to wake up, but I may not be awake yet, or I might be awake. But so that sometimes it's I'm not really sure, but there's other times where I'm just in prayer and I'll see something. And my wife gets them not as frequently as I do, but she does get them as well. And usually when she does, it blesses my socks off because it oftentimes confirms things that that I've already received myself, and they might be in a little different, a little different representations in either the visions or dreams. But one of them she specifically had. I'd asked the Lord. I was in a situation after we married and we lived in Tennessee together for the first year and a half of our marriage. Work was slowing down, and we felt like we needed to move somewhere else. An opportunity came up to move down here to Houston, and we could live across the street from her mom and stepfather in another house that they owned and used for ministry purposes. Usually, her mom did prison ministry, and so when her girls came out of prison, she would oftentimes let them use that house to kind of get resituated. And so let me see. Let me get my head together here. Where was I going with that? Something related to dreams and visions. Oh, I hate it when that happens. Lord help me.
you said you get visions when you're praying?
Yeah, sometimes when I'm
Do
praying.
they show up in your mind's eye? Like
Yeah, well, there are, most of the time my eyes are closed, but once in a while I will see a vision, what's called an open vision, which is when your eyes are actually open and you see something in the spirit realm, but it's in front of you in seemingly in the natural. It's in part of your field of vision, in the natural. It just appears there. Now that's not as often for me as the other types, but I have had that on a couple of occasions. But I've just got so many things in my mind. God's done so many miracles in my life. It's hard to keep everything straight sometimes, and I occasionally lose my train of thought. So please forgive me for that.
That's okay.
But
I have had a few of what I would say visions. Mine, like you had mentioned, when you're kind of half awake, half asleep, but mine frequently happen when I'm falling asleep. And it's like I don't realize that I've gone to sleep, and then all of a sudden something happens around me that is very real. I mean, it feels very real, and I don't really, perceive what's happening. And then when finally I wake up from it, I guess you'd say wake up, but when it's over, then I'm surprised that I'm not there anymore in the vision of what I was seeing. Yeah, it's hard to describe. You may have experienced that as well, but
yeah,
it's kind of disorienting, but it's something that you definitely remember.
Yeah, I did just remember what that vision was that I had. I remember the circumstance now. The situation was I had been praying about a rather concerning situation at work, and I didn't want to trouble my wife with it. And I wanted to hear from the Lord very clearly if he wanted me to just get out of that job situation and trust him for something else, or if he wanted me to stay there. And so I believe that was a Wednesday evening that I began praying that, or Thursday. I can't remember which one it was now. But I began praying, didn't tell Carrie about it. And Sunday evening, I think it was about 7:00, she's sitting there in a daze. I'm sitting next to her. I think she's at the computer and I'm sitting next to her. and she's been in this daze for a while, and said, "What's going on, honey? What's wrong?" And she said, "I'm having these absolutely horrible visions of like bombs dropping and buses crashing into buildings and people on fire and people shooting people, like mercy killings type of thing. And like, I don't know what's happening here. This is just something horrible." And I said, "Well, honey, I've actually been praying and asking the Lord about this particular situation at work. I didn't want to worry you about it, but this is the situation." And I told her, and the situation was that one of my coworkers, and most of them were, I think they were all unbelievers, and some of them were very, very strong unbelievers that didn't like me being there. And so one day, one of them came up to me with his handheld taser, with the 2 prongs on it. And he put it up to my arm and said, "Hey, can I tase you?" And of course I said no. And thankfully he didn't set it off.
Bizarre.
But that got me really concerned. And so as I shared this with Carrie, she says, "Oh man, I didn't even think about this. But last Wednesday, I had this vision of you, and you were actually on the ground in front of your job having an epileptic seizure. And what would you look like if you were being tased?" It's like,
Right.
I gotta leave.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, I hated to leave a job because, I've been in and out of different jobs, and sometimes it's not always, family don't always understand why you might leave a job, and they think you got to provide for your family, and you do, but at some point you've got to say no to certain things. You got to take stands. And this was one of those times, but we still wanted to be cautious. And so we said, "Well, Lord, if you really want me to leave this job, then please make it so that I don't go to work for the next 3 days." And that's what happened. There was a situation at work where they had run out of stuff for us to do, and they were waiting on another project to start. And so they gave us 3 days off. So,
Wow.
Well, that was nice.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know how much time we've got left, but I would kind of like to transition a little bit into Carrie's story here too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we've got it at least another 20 minutes or so.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
so that's fine.
All right. So, as I said, to back up just a hair, I was talking about that dream of seeing Hamilton Pool and finding out where it was and going and that kind of thing. And so I'm back in my hotel room, and I'm browsing this mutual friends pro-life Facebook page. It turns out she and Carrie were actually best friends at the time. I didn't know that. But I see her disfigured face. And the previous 2 weeks, I had been remembering that situation with my mom in the painting, and I was seeing something I hadn't seen before. On the opposite side of the head of the downturned face of that crying man was the disfigured face of another person who was actually looking up toward the hand. Again, if the hand's like this, I was looking I can't get with all the mirroring stuff here, I can't figure it out. But anyway, I was looking down this way. And on the back side of the face, the person was looking up this way. The disfigured face was looking up toward the palm of the hand. And it's like, there's something here, because I was, again, trying to form a pro-life ministry already for about a year and a half at that point. And so we started talking, and she shared her story with me. And I was like, we gotta figure out a way to meet. God's got something going on here. I have a feeling this is my future wife. And so we'd talk a lot through Facebook. We exchanged phone numbers. We talked constantly on the phone for days. After about 2 or 3 days, part of the story that I learned was that, again, she had miraculously survived her mother's abortion attempt on her life. At 3 months gestation, she stayed in utero during that time. We suspect that she had a twin brother or sister who took the fall, because she had always, before she learned about the abortion attempt at the age of 13, she had always felt she had a twin brother or sister somewhere, but could never explain why. And then all of a sudden, dawn breaks, and she has this moment of understanding. that it was likely her twin that took the fall for her, and she survived.
Wow.
And so we were talking, and in part of our conversation, she mentioned to me that in the 42 years of her life at that point, and this was the day before her 42nd birthday, by the way, and she had told me that for the last 42 years of her life, of course, she wouldn't have dated, the first 14 or 15, 16 years, but no man had ever bothered to ask her out because of the way she looked. And so I was just like, that's wrong. There's just something really wrong with that. You've got to get to know somebody's heart. The physical appearance is a bonus, but, and not that she was ugly in my mind by any stretch of the imagination, but, she wasn't somebody that most people would consider attractive and that most men would want for at least most worldly men would want for their wives. And so I said, this is wrong. I've got to ask her out. So I prayed about it for a day or two. And I finally said, hey, I'm feeling like there's something here. Would you be willing to go out with me? She said, yes. She set up a double date with some friends of hers that were also dating and had been for like the previous 2 years. And I drove the extra 3 hours to Houston, stayed in a hotel, and we met at Asian City Restaurant there in Deerbrook Mall, had our first meal together with her friends. I hadn't shared with her the thing about the painting yet, but I had a copy of the picture of that painting in my wallet. So I shared that with her in person. And, by the end of that first date, we both knew we were supposed to be married. And she would later tell me that she knew as soon as she saw me that we were supposed to be husband and wife at some point. Mm-hmm. And the way the Lord worked it out, that was only 3 months later.
Yeah.
And
now, do you guys have any kids?
We have only had 2 conceptions that are absolute. She thinks there might have been a third, but it was so early, she's not really sure. Never did a pregnancy test on that one. But we miscarried both of them. The first one is another amazing miracle where God brought me through a grief situation. And it used 2 visions Carrie had the morning of the miscarriage after we got out of the hospital. We left the hospital in shock, totally like, why, Lord, what's going on here? We don't understand. I've never had any children prior to that. My first wife didn't want to have kids, and my second wife and I never got pregnant. She really wanted children, but just never worked for us for some reason. And so it really hurt both of us deeply. I mean, Carrie was a virgin when we married. So it was really tough for her to know that she'd waited and, her first child dies. And it really threw her for a loop. But that morning, it was 7 or 8 o'clock, we got out of the hospital. She almost died. Her blood pressure had gotten down to 60/40, and I could see the concern on the doctor's faces. They were talking about transfusing her. She ended up not getting the transfusion. She had a dramatic turnaround all of a sudden. And they were originally doing a D&C to clean things out, whatever, and didn't have to do that. And she was really not wanting to do that because of its connection to, that's one of the ways they do an abortion is through or D&E, actually, dilation and extraction, but very similar to a D&C. And so, thank God the Lord spared her from that. But we decided we were going to go to this place that we'd learned about and been to a few times. There was an octagonal gazebo that was located behind the Blount County, Tennessee Library. And we decided to just go there and pray and process all of what had just happened. And while we were there, the Lord gave Carrie 2 visions. The first vision was of our son. He named him Zion Benjamin. And it was an angel taking this infant child and placing it in the arms of Jesus. And then the second vision was of our son at about 2 years old, sitting in Jesus' lap in the clouds with a beautiful white dove flying behind them. And, she described those things to me. And it was like, wow, that's amazing. That's, that's somewhat comforting, but, we're still devastated, obviously. And so we get home from that. We both collapse in tears on the bed. We'd been up all night and all the day before. So we laid down and collapsed and cried ourselves to sleep. I don't know how long we were asleep, but it was later that afternoon we got up. And she got on Facebook and was browsing Facebook that day. And she saw a painting there that a friend of hers had posted, not because of our situation. She had just posted this painting to her wall. And then the painting was the exact image she'd seen in her second vision.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was just, that did it for me. I still took a week or two to go through the process, but I tend to, because of the way the Lord worked with my mother and other situations in my life, I've had a lot of opportunities to grieve. I've dealt with 4 people being murdered. Wow. A relative committed suicide, and a number of other deaths in the family and friends. Another friend died of leg cancer, and so I've been through the ringer,
wow.
With losses. So. And so one of the aspects of our ministry, is grief ministry, and I just really feel a call to that. And my wife especially, and it's been hard for her. It took her a lot longer to process all of this, being the mom, and all that means and meant to her. But, she's now at a place where she understands that she can use the grief that she went through as part of her being able to minister to post-abortive women who either, it's not always voluntarily. Many times they're forced into aborting because of a abusive boyfriend, or even parents or grandparents. Sometimes they force the children, especially if they're underage, they force them to abort, and they don't want to do that, but they end up doing it because they don't think they have any other choice. They're not strong enough to stand up against their parents or boyfriend or abusive husband or whatever in the situation, and say, no, I'm not going to do that. So she wants to, one of her callings, very strong callings from the Lord, is to reach out to post-abortive women and help them through the healing process and find the love, grace, and mercy of God in the midst of their situation.
That's an important aspect to take.
Yeah.
One of the things that people don't understand is that there are choices out there, and you don't have to take one way or the other way, but you've got to weigh your decisions on things, and you've got to be able to come to your own belief on things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's okay, and that's good that you're there and available for that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really happy to hear that, but in this life of things you've experienced and things you've gone through and things you've changed and things that you're changing still.
Mm-hmm.
I apologize. That was the wrong question to put
That's
up there.
okay.
But
I can still answer it, though.
What
advice would I
advice
give
would you give to your
Well,
younger
I would
self?
say come to the Lord earlier in your life. And because I was, believe I was 24 when I came to the Lord. I was in Tennessee, the house that One Vision related to. I was living in Tennessee at the time, months from pursuing the relationship with a woman who became my first wife in Northern Virginia. So I'd say, come to the Lord sooner, and do not, under any circumstances, get sexually involved before you get married. I made that mistake big time. I was highly addicted to pornography, sexual promiscuity, even went down the homosexual route, just briefly dabbled with it, never really got whole hog into it, but I did dabble with it very early on. And that would be the advice to my younger self, as well as to anybody else.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What's the best advice you've ever received? That was supposed to be the
Yeah,
question.
that's okay. Well, best advice I've ever received was, an old girlfriend. Thankfully, it was one that we never got sexually involved. We did kiss, but we never got sexually involved with each other. And she wrote me a letter sometime 6 months to a year after she moved out of the area. She was attending a Catholic college in New Hampshire at the time, and she felt led to follow her degree at a college down in I believe it was Maryland, if I remember correctly. And she wrote me a letter one day and said she'd gotten into a group of people that didn't believe in sleeping around, didn't believe in getting drunk, and, told me a little bit of her testimony, and really encouraged me to consider, bringing the Lord into my life. And around that same time, my dad decided he was going to give me my first Bible. He had come to the Lord a few years before that. And my initial response when he did that was, what am I going to do with this thing? And he had written a note in there, said, just read a little every day. It's a good way to start your day, just that little bit of counsel. And although I would always hide it under my bed, when I knew nobody was looking, I would take it out and begin reading it. And I would eventually, through that and Christian radio and TV, I'd started listening to, and her testimony, as well as Johnny Erickson's testimony. I'd actually seen her a number of years before that in person. Johnny Erickson, now Tata, paraplegic, who now paints and draws with her teeth and has an international ministry to other disabled people. She was very influential in my salvation too. And
that's great.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself for the next year? What are your goals that
your
short-term goals?
Well, I mean, we're in a situation right now where we are trusting the Lord for basically every week. We had a setback in our graphic design and printing business where, although the woman that my wife was doing these graphic designs and social media post scheduling for, she loved Carrie's work, but she just felt like the Lord wanted her to explore a different advertising that my wife was not proficient in. And so she ended up letting my wife know that she wasn't going to need her paid services anymore. They did work out an arrangement where they would end up bartering for 5 hours of her service for her helping my wife prepare to write her book. Now, she has written a devotional. We haven't published it yet, but she has written a devotional. Speaking of books, it's a good time to bring up this one. This is not one that we actually published ourselves or had published for us, but Carrie won a writing contest. She was asked to submit her story, and she, along with 9 other people, won the rights to be placed in this book, and then also got a $500 cash prize as well. So we currently are out of stock on the book, but it costs us over $200 to buy 66 copies of the book. So we don't have any other than this last one, and we kind of want to keep that around. But if anybody's interested, if we can get enough people interested in getting the book and get pre-orders, we can order the case and then ship them out.
Nice.
So anyway, continue.
Do you have plans to write another book?
I still haven't finished the other question. Can you go back to that question? Can you scroll back to it? So what I see for us in the next year is, thankfully, although we're week to week and trust in the Lord, and sometimes it's through gifts, sometimes it's through an opportunity to do a little bit of work, outside of our graphic design business. But and that one particular situation I said about with my wife and this other ministry that she was doing the graphic design and social media posting for, that was an $800 a month source of income. And I'm on Social Security, she's on disability. So we really needed that. And for the last almost 4 months now, we've not had that income. And so we've been trusting the Lord. It wasn't that bad initially because we did have a little bit in the bank, not a lot. We did have a little bit in the bank, but that's since been exhausted. And there's been twice now, I think, that we haven't had our rent, but the Lord's provided for it one way or the other. Again, either through some other kind of side job, helping clean up somebody's yard, or we in one case, part of it was selling a keyboard that we had that we hadn't really played in a long time. And, sometimes somebody, like the last time, somebody was led to give us $300, and the Lord had put it on their heart. They didn't even know we needed it. And the Lord had told them, you need to send Richard and Carrie $300. So, we know God's going to provide. We just don't know how always. But right now, we've had several situations come up this week. Had my pastor approached me about designing some banners for a new congregation facility that we just moved into, and it's on the 3rd floor, so people need to know, if they're new people, they need to know how to get up to the where we're located. And so he's asked to design those. I've got somebody else right now who wants us to do 3 social media posts for a human trafficking event, an anti-human trafficking event that's coming up at the end of the month. And then another individual from Jamaica actually approached me about the possibility of an affiliate relationship with his company. He actually designs and builds websites. And so I have set up, just as of yesterday, I set up that affiliate link. And so I can now offer websites as part of our graphic design. Although he will be building them, it's still a service we can now offer where we couldn't really do that before. So I see business really picking up for us. I see ministry opportunities picking up for us. We desire to go out and speak. I know the Lord's called us both nationally and internationally. We had a prophet come to our congregation not long ago and gave it like almost a 25-minute prophetic word over my wife and I, and that included ministry opportunities coming up in both California and Wisconsin. Wisconsin has actually started looking like it might be coming to pass. We haven't worked out any details there. If this one doesn't, we know there's another one coming. But, there's a lot of things on the horizon. And we believe that this is a season for us where we're just going to begin to see the Lord prosper us in ways that he's been showing us since the beginning of our marriage. And he's been showing just astronomical provision coming in to build the kingdom with, and of course, take care of our needs too. But we've never wanted to live extravagantly. We want to live more comfortably than we do now, but we don't want to live extravagantly. So.
That's understandable.
Yeah, it's still hard to wait on the Lord, but when you do, you're blessed for it.
Amen.
Is there anything you wish to share with our viewers about how they can get in contact with you, find out more about your books, and get educated on upcoming releases?
Okay. Well, I can give them a website, and that will also be down in the description of this video. And it's the letter R, the letter C. R is in Richard, C is in Carrie, the name Fischer, spelled Fischer, the numeral 5, the letter W, the numeral 20 at gmail.com. And there's also social media links down below, link to our 2 Facebook groups, both business and ministry Facebook groups, as well as our YouTube channel.
That's correct. Anybody watching and want to know more about Richard, within the post, there's links to all of his social media posts as well as his website. So check him out. Well, Richard, it's been an honor and a privilege to have you on our podcast this Sunday. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us on a Sunday, especially in the evening.
Yeah, the honor is all mine.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And you will be included in my prayers moving forward too.
Thank you.
Hope that you have everything that comes to you, and that your visions continue, and that you and Carrie start to build that business up and begin to have more in your life. So we appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. My pleasure.
You're certainly very welcome. Is there anything you wanted to wrap up with this today, Susan?
Yeah. How about Richard? Did you have something else you wanted to say?
Well, I actually, the reason for my sigh is I kind of felt like the Lord was wanting me to do something, but I was like, are you really wanting me to do that, Lord? So
Yeah, I've had that feeling.
I was going to do this earlier at church, but we were already running late and I didn't feel like I had the opportunity to do it there. So if you can spare 2 minutes and you feel it's appropriate, coming from most of my faith walk, although not the early couple of years, but most of my faith walk has been involved in Messianic Judaism, Jews who believe in Jesus. And along the lines, I have learned the Aaronic benediction in Hebrew. And of course, that's from number 6, I believe. And in English, it's the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. And if you'd like, I'd be willing to try to do that in Hebrew.
Go for it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would like that.
Okay. Thank you, Lord. Yevarechecha Adonai vayishmarecha. Yaher Adonai panav elecha vihunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha ve'asem lecha shalom. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you.
That was very
That's
good.
good.
Thank you for
You know,
the
that's
blessing.
one of,
Thank you
I
for
have to say
doing
though,
that for us.
that verse that you said, that the Lord lift up his countenance upon you
Mm-hmm.
and make his face shine upon you and all that,
Mm-hmm.
that is part of the reason that our company's named Soul Sunshine.
Okay.
That's one of the first verses that had come into my mind when we first thought of the name. So
Yeah.
I think that was really appropriate. And like I said, it was very
Wow.
beautiful. And thank you so much.
And as you well know, we've got other connections related to Soul Sunshine too,
Yes,
as far as how the Lord brought us together. So
right.
maybe another time we can share that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for being on, and we really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Have
God bless you
a
all.
blessed rest of your Sunday, and
Thank you. You too.
stick around in the lobby. We'll talk here in just a few minutes.
Okay.
All right. So there we go.
Yeah,
That was a great show.
yeah, that was pretty
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's the second show we've had where we've been blessed by um amazing. I mean, just amazing circumstances.
Mhm.
Uh, it's always a different feeling when we're being blessed in a different language or a different dialect or a different
Yeah,
um than what we're used to. So
yeah,
uh,
yeah. And I so appreciated it. It's one of those things where you know God is in it, and
mhm,
it gives you the feeling of, comfort and and happiness. That
definitely
God is there. He knows you're there, and he cares,
right.
and he wants you
Okay.
to know that he's there. So it's always a good feeling.
I agree. I agree. Well, I want to thank all of our viewers for spending time with us here on Sundays. It's generally a day of rest, and we always appreciate the time that you can spend with us and share our moments with you. And we'll be back again next week. I hope you guys all have a safe and fun week. Um, that the weather holds up for you guys, and you just can enjoy and feel blessed for the rest of the week. And also watch out because we got some cool stuff coming out. We really need to
Yeah.
let you guys know what Soul Sunshine's got coming out. We've got some very cool stuff coming out. So
Hmm.
be on the
We
lookout
do.
for that.
Yep.
As always, thank you for watching Shine with Curiosity and Encouragement. We'll see you guys all next week.
Ever dreamed of seeing your name on the cover of a book? As a book publisher, we understand the challenges of self-publishing. If you're lost in the process, wondering about illustrators, book coaches, or formatting issues, worry not. At Soul Sunshine, we're here to guide you. Let's turn your dream into reality. Contact us to get started.